Now, there are a lot of important films with great messages in history, from It's a Wonderful Life to One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest to more underground films such as Rumblefish. And in this decade, there's one that I think has become more relevant as social media gets more and more tolerant of violence and hate. That being the 2011 film Snowtown. The plot follows Jamie, a 16-year-old boy who, alongside his brothers, are abused. Eventually, their mother, who is depressed, goes into a relationship with a man named John Bunton, who changes Jamie's life via getting him to take part in multiple murders. Now, the murders are originally, quote, with good intentions, end quote, but the film quite clearly makes it clear John is a rather cruel and manipulative person. He picks up on Jamie's weak mind and thus is able to influence him. Specifically, he's able to get Jamie to hate gay people, which John hates, and is one of the main reasons he commits these murders. Now, the film truly switches tone when we see the first murders, those being of Barry, a cross-dressing man who introduced Jamie's mother to John due to the mother's former boyfriend taking indecent photos of her sons, which I'll come back to later. And Gavin, Jamie's drug-addicted best friend, who it's made quite obvious John hates from their first interaction. And the scene is quite disturbing, but well done. From the one shot it's done in, to John's inhumane, emotionless facial expressions, to the handheld camera, which gives it that up-close and personal feel. And just the idea of dead people just being in the back of someone's house is truly terrifying. And overall, it's a great scene where you get to see John's motivation of Jamie by constantly saying it was for him he did these murders for.
Fucking junkie. Hey? I'm only looking after you, mate. I'm looking after you. I'm looking after you.
Whilst in reality, he's just a psychopathic serial killer who loved to torture people, even if they didn't commit crimes or do anything to him. Given the fact it was later revealed in real life, he killed just people for being fat or just being drug addicts. Now, I think the film on its own is great, however, I think its message is even more important. It's basically a film about the dangers of social justice, as John wants to kill and torture paedophiles and help these lost kids, as Jamie is both abused by his mother's boyfriend Jeffrey via the pictures, but also his half-brother also abuses him in a very disturbing, unflinching scene, who would also later be murdered by Jamie and John. However, John is shown in a very intelligent scene to do the same thing Jeffrey did to Jamie and his brothers. Now, I can't show the scene, for obvious reasons, but Jeffrey takes photos of each of Jamie and his brothers, asking them to turn each time he takes a photo. And in another scene, John gets a woman to strip off naked and says the same words as Jeffrey, asking her to turn, which points out directly to the fact John isn't really altruistic at all, and he just wants to use the "I'm doing this to protect the community" as an excuse to torture and kill and financially gain from these people, with the evidence he uses being quite flimsy and often wrong. The film is eerily quite important nowadays, with a lot of similar type of events happening. Like on Twitter, the amount of pedophiles getting beat up has increased. I even saw a video of a group of people setting one on fire. Now, these criminals should 100% be punished. However, is setting them on fire to burn not a horrible, inhuman act in its own right? Now, I'm not trying to defend these criminals. I'm just pointing out the hypocrisy and saying what they do is evil, which it is, but acting like setting and burning them to death isn't also a cruel, monstrous punishment. But the people doing it that are being treated as some kind of heroes, which I think is just morally wrong. And in the film, it's even heavily hinted at the fact these people he's killing is based on flimsy evidence. And eventually he starts killing gay people because to him being gay is the same as being a child predator. And if you look at the form of torture he used on his victims, it was very sexual in nature, which his accomplice, Robert, who is in the film, he was hinted at being abused by Barry in the film, but in real life he was abused by Barry, the cross-dresser. And thus the torture he and John did was quite intense, involving sort of shoving things in certain tight areas. Overall, the film, whilst brutal, including a very visceral torture scene, in which it involves the removal of a toenail, it is a very necessary film. It doesn't glorify the characters, their actions, and I think is a really important film with an important message that becomes more and more relevant by the day. It's about the dangers of social justice and how far that can really go.